Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. I've been on Tinder long enough to know when someone's too good to be true. Usually, I can tell right away when a guy is throwing out recycled lines or when their pictures look like they were stolen from some model's Instagram. But this one felt different. His profile was simple, nothing flashy, just normal pictures of him at coffee shops, out walking, a couple selfies. He looked like someone you'd bump into at the store, not someone trying to fake a whole life. That's what made me swipe right. We started talking that same night. He was funny in a casual way, not forced. He didn't push for anything, just kept the conversation light. For once, it felt normal. After a few days, we agreed to meet up at a bar downtown. Nothing crazy, just drinks. The night came, and I remember sitting at a table by the window, scrolling through my phone while waiting for him. When I finally looked up and saw him walking in, my chest dropped so hard I thought I was about to pass out. It wasn't just that he looked familiar. He looked exactly like my ex. The ex I hadn't seen in years. The ex who basically disappeared off the face of the earth. I dated this guy, Nathan, back in college. We weren't perfect, but I cared about him more than I'd ever admit. Then one day, he just vanished. His phone disconnected, his apartment cleared out, his friends acted like they hadn't heard from him. I never got closure. One day he was in my life, the next day he was gone. I tried to move on, but he always haunted me like some ghost in the back of my head that I couldn't let go of. And now here I was, staring at his face again. Except it wasn't him. This guy introduced himself as someone else, and he didn't recognize me at all. He had the same voice, same crooked smile, even the scar above his eyebrow that Nathan got from falling off his skateboard. But when I mentioned anything slightly personal, there was no spark of recognition. At first, I thought maybe he was screwing with me. Maybe this was some twisted game, like he wanted to see if I'd crack. But the more he talked, the more it seemed like he really didn't know me. He told me about his childhood in a different city, how he just moved here a year ago, how he never had a girlfriend seriously before. Every word felt like a lie because I knew him. I knew the way he tapped his fingers on the table, the way he tilted his head when he was thinking, the way his laugh came out in 2 short bursts before he actually started laughing. I sat there drinking, barely listening, while my brain spun in circles. Was it possible this was just some insane coincidence? That 2 people could look and act this identical without being the same person? I tried to find little differences. Maybe his nose was slightly straighter, maybe his hair was cut shorter, but it didn't matter. I knew what I was seeing. After an hour, we left the bar and walked outside. He asked if I wanted to go grab food, and I agreed, more out of curiosity than interest. I felt like I was following a stranger who had stolen my ex's body. I kept waiting for him to slip, to say something only Nathan would know, but it never happened. We sat at this small 24-hour diner, the kind with buzzing lights and sticky tables. I remember looking at him across the booth, the way he held the menu in one hand while rubbing his thumb over the laminated corner. Nathan used to do that exact same thing, like he needed to keep his hands busy. I excused myself to the bathroom, and when I got there, I locked the door and stared at my reflection. My hands were shaking. It didn't make sense. My ex didn't have a twin, no long-lost brother, nothing like that. I thought about texting a friend. What would I even say? Hey, I'm on a date with my dead ex who claims he's not my ex. They tell me I was losing it. When I went back to the table, he was scrolling through his phone. I glanced at the screen and my stomach flipped. His lock screen wallpaper wasn't some random photo. It was a picture of a lake. The same lake Nathan took me to on our first trip together. Down to the angle, the little wooden dock in the corner, the way the trees reflected off the water. I sat down slowly, and he didn't even notice me staring. He just kept scrolling like nothing was strange. I wanted to ask him where he got that photo, but my throat locked up. The rest of the night is kind of a blur. I barely touched my food. He talked about work, hobbies, whatever, but I couldn't focus. All I kept thinking was that I was sitting across from someone who was either lying about everything or wasn't supposed to exist. When the check came, I let him pay just so I could get out faster. He walked me to my car, smiled, and said he had a good time. His eyes looked straight into mine, and for a second I thought I saw it. Something flicker like maybe he did remember me, but it was gone in an instant. He just turned and walked away into the night. I sat in my car for almost an hour, just watching the entrance of the diner, waiting for him to come back out, but he never did. The next day, his profile was gone from Tinder. No trace of him anywhere. I tried searching his name online, checked social media, everything. Nothing. It was like he'd been erased overnight, just like Nathan years ago. Sometimes when I'm out in public, I catch glimpses of him. A man walking too quickly across the street, someone sitting 2 rows ahead on the train, a face passing by in a crowd. I can't tell if it's really him or if my brain is playing tricks on me. Either way, I stopped dating altogether. An old swipe. Don't go out. Because if I ever see that face again, I don't know if I'll be able to walk away this time. I should know the night was going to be weird from the second she waved me over. I'd matched with her a week earlier, and she was cute enough, kind of flirty in the chats, nothing too out of the ordinary. She picked this trendy bar downtown, the kind of place that blasts loud music even though nobody's dancing. When I spotted her sitting at a high table, she gave me this big grin like we'd known each other forever. The strange part started right away. As I sat down, she called me by a name that wasn't mine. I laughed it off, figured she must have just misheard me in a chat or something. But then she did it again and again. Every time she looked at me, she called me Ryan. That's not even close to my name. I corrected her once, thinking maybe she'd just slipped up. But it didn't stop. I'd say something, and she'd nod like she was listening, and then go right back to Ryan this, Ryan that. It was unsettling, but I tried to roll with it. People get nervous on first dates. Maybe she just blanked. The drinks kept coming, and she started getting more comfortable, leaning closer, smiling a little too much. At one point, she admitted she's been meeting a lot of people off Tinder. The way she said it was casual, like she didn't care if it came across bad. She even joked about mixing up names because there were so many. I forced a laugh, but inside it fell off. The weirdest part was how she looked at me. It wasn't like she was getting to know me. It was like she was measuring me, comparing me to some mental checklist. Her eyes lingered on my jaw, my hands, even the way I sat. I started noticing she glanced down at her phone between sips of her drink, not like she was bored, but like she was double-checking something. When I excused myself to the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of her screen. She was scrolling through pictures of different guys. They all looked eerily similar to me. Same haircut, same build, even the same kind of scruffy beard. It was like I was staring at a lineup of clones with slight variations. I went to the bathroom and locked myself in a stall just to process what I'd seen. My head spun. Was she dating guys that looked like me on purpose? Was this some obsession thing? I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but deep down I knew it wasn't. When I came back, she was all smiles, acting normal, but I couldn't shake what I'd seen. The way she kept calling me Ryan suddenly felt intentional, like I was just filling in a slot she needed. I wanted to ask her straight up, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't want to sound crazy. We wrapped up after another drink, and she suggested walking to her car since it was parked a few blocks away. The streets were quieter now, dim lights buzzing above us. I kept a few steps behind her, trying to figure out if I should just bail. She kept turning around and flashing me that same grin, like I was exactly where she wanted me. At her car, she lingered, leaning against the door like she was waiting for me to make a move. I mumbled something about having an early morning, and she didn't argue. She just gave me this long look, the kind that makes you feel like someone's trying to memorize your face. Then she said, "See you soon, Ryan," and slipped into her car. I drove home uneasy, my stomach in knots. The whole night replayed in my head, every time she called me that name, every glance at her phone. By the time I got home, I couldn't resist. I opened Tinder and scrolled through her profile again. Everything looked normal. Same pictures, same bio. But then I noticed her likes were visible, probably because of some premium feature. I clicked and my heart dropped. Dozens of guys, all variations of me. Some taller, some stockier, but all sharing the same features. Same haircut, same beard style, same clothes even. It was like looking at alternate versions of myself. Curiosity got the better of me, so I searched a couple of their profiles. One guy had a public Instagram linked. I clicked it and froze. His photos looked almost staged, same coffee shop selfies, same casual mirror pics. He could have been my brother. Another guy had a tagged picture with her. She was smiling on his arm like she had with me, and in that photo she called him Ryan in the caption. My stomach turned. She was recycling the exact same date, the same lines, maybe even the same bar. Over the next week, I kept checking her profile. More names popped up. More guys who looked like me. It wasn't just a coincidence anymore. She was collecting us one by one. One night I couldn't sleep, so I went down a rabbit hole searching the usernames of a few of those guys. Some accounts were active, some hadn't posted in months. A couple seemed to have just gone dark completely. No updates, no comments, nothing. It felt like they'd just stopped existing. I haven't matched with her again since. I deleted Tinder a few days later. But sometimes I think about her scrolling through that lineup of men who all look like me, and I wonder if she's still out there calling someone else Ryan tonight. And the scariest part is knowing that if I walked past one of those guys on the street, I probably wouldn't even recognize if it was me or one of them. I matched with this guy who seemed almost too normal. His pictures weren't the typical shirtless mirror selfies or him flexing with a car. He was just put together. Coffee shop, a bookstore, one at some rooftop bar with friends. His bio was short but not cringe. We talked for a couple days, and he asked if I wanted to come by his place for wine. Usually I'd say no right away, but something about him felt safe. When I got to his building, it was nicer than I expected. One of those modern places with glass doors and polished floors in the lobby. I texted him when I arrived, and he buzzed me in right away. The elevator ride up was quiet, and I remember staring at myself in the mirrored walls, wondering if I was overdoing it or underdoing it. His apartment was on the top floor. When he opened the door, the first thing that hit me was how spotless it was. Not just clean, immaculate. Everything looked like it had been staged for a photo shoot. The couch didn't even have a wrinkle in the cushions. The table was completely bare except for a single bottle of wine, and two glasses already set out. He smiled, welcomed me in, and took my coat, hanging it perfectly straight in the closet. I told myself he was just neat, maybe a little obsessive about cleanliness. Some people are like that, but the longer I looked around, the more unsettling it became. The books on the shelves were all lined up evenly, no dog-eared pages, no dust. The kitchen counters had nothing on them, not even a toaster or a kettle. We sat down with the wine, and I tried to relax, but something kept pulling at my attention. There was a large glass cabinet against the far wall. It looked like something you'd see in a museum. At first glance, it just seemed like more decoration, but the closer I looked, the more out of place it felt. Inside the cabinet were women's belongings. Not random clutter, but carefully displayed items. A lipstick tube, a folded silk scarf, a pair of sunglasses, a necklace. Each piece sat on a little velvet square, evenly spaced, as if they were part of some exhibit. There was even a pair of heels placed neatly at the bottom, side by side. I froze for a second staring at it. My brain went into overdrive trying to make sense of it. Maybe he collected things. Maybe they were gifts from old girlfriends. But why lock them up like that? Why arrange them so carefully? He noticed me glancing at the case, and he smiled like it was no big deal. He didn't explain it, didn't say anything, just poured more wine and asked me a question about my jaw. I answered, but my mind wasn't there. My eyes kept drifting back to the cabinet. What unsettled me most wasn't just what was in it, but how personal the items were. They weren't antiques or rare collectibles. They were everyday things. The kind of stuff someone would carry in their purse, wear out a casual night, or leave on their bedside table. It didn't look like a collection. It looked like pieces of people's lives, frozen and displayed. I excused myself to use the bathroom, more just to get out of that living room for a minute. The bathroom, of course, was spotless too. The towels were folded perfectly, the soap looked unused, even the toothbrush on the counter was aligned straight with the edge of the sink. It felt less like someone lived there and more like someone had built a set for someone else to walk into. When I came back, he had moved to the cabinet. He was standing there with the door open, adjusting one of the items. I think it was the scarf. He smoothed it out carefully, then locked the door again. He glanced over his shoulder at me and smiled, as if he wanted me to know he took pride in keeping it perfect. I sat down, my throat dry even though I just had wine. My mind kept spinning scenarios where these exes of his. Did he keep souvenirs from every date? Or was it something darker? The thought crossed my mind that maybe these women didn't leave by choice. The rest of the night felt like I was trapped in a loop. He kept making conversation, asking me questions, topping off my glass. I nodded and smiled, but inside I was calculating how long I needed to stay before it wouldn't be suspicious to leave. Every tick of the clock on the wall felt heavier. Finally, I told him I had an early morning and needed to head out. He didn't argue, just stood up, walked me to the door, and handed me my coat. He leaned against the frame, still smiling, and told me he'd like to see me again. I nodded, muttered something about texting him, and walked quickly down the hall. In the elevator, my hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. When I got outside, I didn't look back until I was already in my car with the doors locked. His window was dark, no sign of movement. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there replaying the glass cabinet in my mind over and over again. Those belongings weren't random. They were too personal, too specific. And the way he handled them, like they were treasures, I can't forget it. I matched him on Tinder the next morning, blocked his number, and tried to erase his face from my head. But sometimes when I'm out, I see women wearing things that look exactly like what was in that cabinet, and I wonder if he's still adding to it. And I wonder if he ever thought about where my stuff would go if I'd stay a little longer that night.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I should have trusted my gut the second I saw her car. That's how the whole night started going sideways. She pulled up outside the restaurant in this old black SUV, one of those models that looks like it could survive a war. I almost bailed right then, but I figured it'd be rude to back out after the date actually went decent. We'd met for dinner, nothing fancy, just a pub in town. She was pretty chill at first, laughed at my jokes, didn't scroll on her phone, seemed genuinely into the conversation. I thought it was going well. When we wrapped up, she insisted on driving me home. I usually wouldn't get in a stranger's car, but she said she parked right outside, and honestly, I was tired and didn't feel like waiting on the bus. The second I got in, I noticed how clean the inside was. Not just wiped down, but stripped bare. No air freshener, no receipts, no random jacket tossed in the back. Just spotless leather seats and a faint smell of bleach that made my stomach twist. At first, I didn't think much about the route. She drove confidently, no hesitation at turns, like she knew where she was going. But after a while, I realized nothing looked familiar. My neighborhood was in the opposite direction, and I pointed that out. She just kept her eyes on the road, smiling faintly like she knew something I didn't. Streetlights thinned out. Houses turned into stretches of empty road. The further we went, the darker it got, until it was just headlights cutting through trees. I asked her again where we were going, trying to keep my voice casual, but my chest felt heavy. That's when she finally spoke, calm and steady, like she rehearsed it. "This is where I bring men who ghost me." I laughed nervously at first, waiting for her to crack a smile, but she didn't. Her hand stayed tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. My mouth went dry. I realized I hadn't even told her where I lived. She never asked. We kept driving deeper into nowhere, the road narrowing until it felt like we were in the middle of the woods. I stared out the window, searching for landmarks, anything that might tell me where we were. Nothing but trees and the occasional glint of water off a ditch. My mind raced through every possible outcome. Was she serious? Was this some sick joke? The worst part was how calm she seemed, like she'd done this before. Like this was routine. After what felt like forever, she pulled off onto a dirt track. The SUV bounced over rocks and dips until it opened into a clearing. The headlights lit up a wide patch of ground, tire marks dove deep into the mud. My stomach turned when I saw random scraps lying around: an old shoe, a torn piece of fabric, a cracked phone case half buried in the dirt. She killed the engine, and the sudden silence felt like it swallowed me whole. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears I thought she'd hear it too. She just sat there, staring straight ahead, breathing slow and steady. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to get out, but where would I run? It was pitch black beyond the reach of the headlights, trees pressing in on all sides. I thought about lunging for the keys, but her hands were still resting on them. Finally, she turned her head toward me, and the smile was gone. Her face was blank, eyes fixed on mine like she was waiting for me to make the first move. I muttered something about needing to leave, forcing my voice not to crack. She tilted her head slightly, then looked back out at the clearing. The tension was unbearable, like a rubber band stretched to the point of snapping. After a long pause, she started the car again. No explanation, no change in her expression. She shifted into reverse and slowly backed out of the clearing, then pulled back onto the main road. Neither of us said a word the entire ride. I sat rigid in the seat, staring out the window, memorizing every turn just in case I needed to retrace it later. She kept that same calm composure, eyes locked on the road, like nothing had happened. When we finally reached my street, she pulled up in front of my building. The relief that washed over me almost made me collapse. I opened the door as fast as I could, mumbling thanks just to get out. Before I closed it, she leaned slightly toward me. Her voice was quiet, almost soft. "Don't ghost me." And she smiled again, that same faint smile from before, and drove off. I stood on the curb, watching her taillights disappear until the street was empty. My legs were shaking so bad I had to sit down on the steps before I could even get my keys out. That night, I deleted Tinder. I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head, the way she said it so casually, like it was just a fact. And the scraps I saw in that clearing, things that didn't belong there, kept flashing through my mind. I never heard from her again. No texts, no calls, no messages. Sometimes I wonder if she only let me go because she believed I wouldn't ghost her. And sometimes when I drive past wooded areas at night, I think about how many men didn't make it back to their neighborhoods, and how close I came to being one of them. My phone dying on a date is basically my worst nightmare, and of course that's exactly what happened that night. We were at this small Italian restaurant he picked out, dim lights, candles on every table, the whole cliche setup. I'd been checking the time on my phone and scrolling between courses, then suddenly the screen went black. Dead. I sighed, more annoyed than anything, and he immediately offered his charger. Said he had one in his car and that we could plug it in when we left. At the time, I didn't think twice. People carry chargers around all the time. I figured it was just him being nice. Dinner went fine. He wasn't super charming, but not weird either. Just average, which honestly felt refreshing after a few disastrous dates. When the check came, he paid, and we headed outside. His car was parked right across the street. The inside of his car was spotless, too spotless. No random fast food bags, no crumpled receipts. Just a sleek interior and his phone sitting on the console, plugged into the port. He grabbed the charger and handed it to me, and told me to go ahead and plug in while he finished sending a text. I locked my phone, plugged it in, and waited for the little charging symbol to pop up. That's when I noticed something weird. On his screen, just for a second, there was a pop-up. It flashed fast, but I swear it said my passcode had been saved. My heart stopped. I froze, staring at his phone while pretending to adjust mine. I couldn't have read that right. No way. But then I thought about it. How would his phone even recognize my code? Why wouldn't it pop up like that at all? I tried to act casual, sliding my phone into my lap, but my pulse was racing. I wanted to test it, so I locked my phone, then unlocked it again. As soon as I did, another tiny notification appeared on his device, like it had registered my exact input. He didn't notice me watching. He was too busy tapping away at a message, but my stomach sank. He already had my code. That's not something that just happens by accident. I started running through possibilities in my head. Did he somehow mirror my phone? Was there an app? Some hack? I hadn't even known him for 2 weeks, and somehow he had access to my most personal thing. He looked up and smiled like nothing was wrong, asked if it was charging okay. I nodded, but I was gripping my phone so tight my hand hurt. The ride after that felt like hours, even though he was just dropping me at the train station. I barely said a word. My mind was spiraling, thinking about everything on my phone. Messages, photos, banking apps, my address saved in maps. If he really had my passcode, he could get into everything. When he pulled up to the station, I mumbled thanks and got as fast as I could. The second his car was out of sight, I locked my phone and started digging. First thing I noticed was that it was warm, hotter than it should have been from just charging. That set off alarm bells. I went into settings and scrolled through everything. Nothing obvious, no random apps or changes. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen. That pop-up wasn't a glitch. On the train home, I kept staring at my screen, half expecting it to start acting on its own. I tried to remember every time I'd set my phone down during dinner, every moment he could have touched it. Maybe he'd installed something when I went to the bathroom. Maybe the charger itself wasn't normal. My head was pounding from overthinking. The worst part was when I got home and opened my messages. A few unread ones from friends were marked as read, even though I hadn't opened them. That's when my stomach dropped completely. Someone else had been inside my phone. I stayed up all night, backing up my stuff, changing passwords, resetting everything. I even factory reset the phone, but even then I didn't feel safe, because it wasn't just the phone, it was the fact that he planned it. He'd been ready with a charger, ready for my battery to die, ready for me to plug in. I blocked him everywhere, deleted Tinder, but it didn't stop the paranoia. For weeks I kept checking my phone, convinced he was still in it somehow. Sometimes I'd get strange notifications, random login attempts on my email, but I couldn't prove it was him. The last straw was a week later when I woke up to find my map's history showing a location I hadn't gone to. A coffee shop miles away. I stared at it for hours, wondering if he'd been tracking me or worse, if he'd taken my phone while I slept. I ended up buying a whole new phone just to feel sane again. And even now, I can't use anyone else's charger without my stomach knotting up. Every time I see that little pop up when I unlock my phone, I think about his screen, flashing my code like it already belonged to him. And the scariest part, he never reached out, not once, which makes me wonder if he doesn't need to anymore. I'll admit it, I got hooked by the pictures. She looked unreal. The kind of profile you don't think you'll ever match with. The type that feels out of your league, but you swipe right anyway because why not? Long hair, perfect smile, outfit shots that looked like they came straight out of some fashion page. And somehow she matched with me. We started chatting, and it was smooth from the beginning. She kept the conversation short but flirty, like she was actually interested. Usually when someone looks that good, you expect them to lead you on read or hit you with one-word answers. She asked questions back, wanted to know where I lived, what kind of places I like to hang out at. It felt unreal that she was giving me the time of day. After a couple of days, she suggested meeting up. Said she liked this quiet spot near the edge of town, a bar that wasn't too crowded. She even sent me the address. I checked it on maps. It was real, just tucked away down some side street I'd never been to. The night came and I was nervous. I cleaned up better than usual, even ironed my shirt. The whole way there, I kept imagining her sitting across from me. The way she looked in her pictures, that smile aimed directly at me. The street was darker than I expected when I pulled up. The bar was there, but it looked half dead. One neon sign buzzing faintly, windows clouded over so I couldn't see inside. I parked and sat in my car for a second, checking Tinder to confirm. She'd sent me a little winking emoji earlier that day with "see you soon." I walked up to the door, but before I could even reach for the handle, I heard fast footsteps behind me. I turned, and out of nowhere, three guys came at me. Masks covering their faces, hoods pulled up. I barely had time to react before one shoved me hard against the wall. Everything blurred after that. My head cracked against the bricks, pain exploding down my neck. One of them went straight for my pockets while another pinned my arms. I tried to fight, kicking and thrashing, but it was useless. Every time I tried to move, a fist connected with my ribs or my stomach. They worked fast. My wallet was gone, my phone ripped from my hand. Even my keys yanked free. One of them pressed something sharp against my side, not stabbing, just enough to let me know they could if they wanted. The worst part wasn't the pain, it was how quiet it all was. No yelling, no words, just quick, efficient movements like they'd done this 100 times before. Within a minute, they backed off. One gave me a final shove, and I stumbled onto the pavement gasping. By the time I scrambled back up, they were already gone, disappearing into the shadows down the side street. It was like they'd melted into the dark. Shaking, I staggered back to my car. My chest was on fire, my face stung, and my hands were trembling so hard I could barely grip the handle. I sat inside, sucking in breaths, trying to calm down enough to think. My wallet, phone, everything gone. Instinctively, I reached for Tinder on my phone before realizing it wasn't there. Panic shot through me. I needed to know if she was real, if she was part of this. I grabbed my spare phone from the glove box, the one I used for work, and logged in. Her profile was gone, completely vanished, not unmatched, not deleted from my chats, just wiped clean like she'd never existed. Every message, every photo gone. That's when the realization hit me like a second punch to the gut. It wasn't some coincidence. It was planned. The quiet bar on the edge of town, the timing, the way she pushed for the meetup, it was a setup from the start. She wasn't real, or if she was, she wasn't the one behind the messages. Those guys were. I sat there for a long time, headlights off, staring at the dark street. My ribs ached with every breath, but the pain didn't matter as much as the thought running circles in my head. They'd known exactly where I'd be. exactly when, and they'd made sure I wouldn't question it because I was too distracted by the idea of meeting someone who seemed out of reach. Eventually, I drove home, every bump in the road sending sparks of pain through my body. I locked my door behind me and just stood in the silence of my apartment, replaying it all. The way her profile seemed perfect, the way she knew exactly how much to say to keep me hooked, the way the guys came out of nowhere, quick and silent like they were waiting for me to walk right into it. I reported it to Tinder the next day, but it didn't matter. That profile was already gone, erased like it never existed. No trace, no pictures to reverse search, nothing. Just gone. For weeks, I kept checking around that bar when I drove past, half expecting to see them again, half expecting another perfect profile to pop up and lead some other guy there. But nothing. Just a dead street with a buzzing neon sign, flickering in the dark. Now, every time I swipe, I second guess everything. Doesn't matter how real the photos look or how genuine the messages sound. Because in the back of my mind, I know there's always a chance that behind the pretty face, it's just three guys waiting in the shadows for someone dumb enough to show up. And I was already that guy once. The night started out normal enough. We met at a small diner, the kind with cracked red booths and neon lights that hummed just a little too loud. He looked like his pictures, maybe a bit taller, and he was charming in that rehearsed kind of a way. Smiled a lot, asked all the right questions, made sure to hold the door open. I thought, okay, maybe this one won't be so bad. Dinner went fine. Nothing amazing, but not uncomfortable either. We laughed about the music playing over the speakers. He told a few stories about his job, and I just went along with it. By the end, it felt safe. That's what made me agree when he insisted on driving me home. I should have said no. Normally, I'd have let someone I barely know take me anywhere. But the way he said it, like it would have been rude to refuse, I just nodded and followed him to his car. It was spotless inside, smelled like one of those pine tree air fresheners. At first, it felt fine. He pulled out of the lot, made small talk about the food, asked if I'd want to hang out again sometime. I told him maybe, still looking out the window, counting the turns in my head. I know on a route home my heart. It's 10 minutes, 3 turns, all through familiar streets. But within 5 minutes, I realized he'd missed the first one. I spoke up, telling him he should turn left a few blocks back. He glanced at me, smiling like it was no big deal, and kept going straight. My stomach tightened. I pointed out the next turn too, but instead of slowing down, he merged onto the highway ramp. That's when everything inside me flipped. I said again that he was going the wrong way. He just kept smiling, both hands on the wheel, and said softly, "Don't worry, I'll bring you somewhere better." The way he said it made my blood run cold. He wasn't joking. His voice was calm, almost reassuring, like I should have trusted him. But every nerve in my body screamed at me not to. The car sped down the highway, lights streaking past. I sat frozen, gripping my bag so hard my fingers ached. I thought about jumping out, but the speed made it impossible. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was nearly dead and buried in my bag, and I didn't want him to see me reaching for it. I kept staring at the exits as we flew by, watching them disappear one by one. The further we went, the fewer cars there were around us. The city lights faded, replaced by long stretches of empty road and dark fields. He kept talking, casual, like nothing was wrong. He mentioned how much he liked driving at night, how peaceful it felt, how he knew a place I'd love. His voice was steady, but his smile never left, and it terrified me more than if he'd been angry. I tried to keep my voice calm, telling him I really needed to go home, that someone was waiting for me. He didn't even look at me. Just kept driving, humming along with some song on the radio. Minutes felt like hours. My chest was tight, my mind spinning through escape plans. Could I grab the wheel? Would we crash? Could I scream out the window at the next car we passed? Except we weren't passing any. It was just us and the empty highway. Finally, he slowed down, pulling onto a smaller exit. The road twisted through trees, no lights, no houses. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. He glanced at me then, the same smile plastered on his face, like he was excited for me to see whatever was waiting. That's when I lied. I told him I was sick. I leaned forward, clutching my stomach, making my breathing heavy, like I might throw up all over his perfect clean car. His smile faltered just slightly, and for the first time he looked annoyed. He pulled over abruptly, muttering under his breath, My hand was already on the door handle. Before he could say anything else, I shoved it open and bolted out into the night. The ground was uneven, gravel crunching under my shoes. I didn't even look back. I just ran, crashing through the trees, branches tearing at my arms. My lungs burned, my heart thrashed, but I kept moving until I saw faint headlights in the distance. The gas station. I stumbled toward it, praying it wasn't closed. When I burst into the light of the parking lot, I turned back once. His car was gone. The road behind me was empty. I went inside, shaking, asking the clerk to call me a cab because my phone was dead. I didn't explain, just stood there trembling until the driver arrived. By the time I got home, the whole thing felt unreal, like a bad dream. But when I checked Tinder the next morning, his profile was still there. Same smiling pictures, same perfect bio, like nothing had happened. I unmatched and blocked him, but that didn't erase the memory of his grin in the dark, or the way his voice sounded when he promised to take me somewhere better. And every time I drive that stretch of highway now, I wonder how far he would have taken me if I hadn't gotten out of that car. I didn't notice anything weird when I left her place. That's the part that still messes with me. The night itself felt normal, almost boring in hindsight. We matched on Tinder, talked for a week, and she invited me over to her apartment. Said she was cooking dinner and didn't feel like going out. I hesitated at first because going straight to someone's place can feel risky, but she seemed normal in messages. She sent me a photo of her kitchen, said she was already chopping vegetables, and it just felt casual. I figured why not. Her building was newer, one of those clean complexes with coded entry doors. She buzzed me in, and her apartment looked average. Neutral colored couch, a few plants on a windowsill, candles lit on the table. She had music playing low in the background, some generic playlist. It all felt staged in a way like a photo from Pinterest brought to life, but I brushed it off. Dinner was fine. She asked a lot of questions, mostly about where I lived, what part of the city I worked in, how far my commute was. At the time, I thought she was just being polite. Looking back, it feels like she was gathering details, logging them somewhere in her head. We ate, had a glass of wine, and talked for a couple of hours. Nothing bad happened. No creepy comments, no weird tension. By the end of the night, I thanked her for having me over, grabbed my jacket off the back of her chair, and left. The drive home was uneventful. The streets were quiet, and I had music blasting just to fill the silence. When I got back to my apartment, I tossed my jacket onto the couch and headed straight for the shower. I didn't even think about the night again until later when I was scrolling on my phone in bed. That's when I got the notification. A little pop-up on my screen I'd never seen before. It said an AirTag had been detected moving with me. My stomach dropped instantly. I sat up in bed, rereading it over and over, trying to convince myself it was a glitch. I tapped on the notification, and it pulled up a map. There it was, my entire route home traced out perfectly, little dots showing where the AirTag had been with me the whole way. I froze. My heart started pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I didn't even own an AirTag. I jumped up, grabbed my jacket, and started patting down the pockets. At first, I didn't feel anything unusual. Then, in the inner pocket, my fingers brushed against something small and round. I pulled it out and just stared at it in disbelief. A white Apple AirTag. It wasn't mine. I felt sick. I dropped on the table like it was something poisonous and backed away, staring at it. My mind raced. How did it get there? I hadn't lent my jacket to anyone. The only time it had been out of my hands was at her place, hanging on the chair while we ate. That's when everything started connecting in my head. The way she asked so many questions about where I lived, how far I traveled. The way she smiled when I told her I lived alone. The way her eyes flicked toward my jacket when I went to grab it before leaving. It all hit at once, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. She had put it there. She wanted to track me. I grabbed the AirTag again, my hands shaking, and held it under the light. It looked normal, but in that moment, it felt like the most dangerous thing I'd ever touched. This tiny device had been following me, silently recording everywhere I went. I didn't know what to do. Should I throw it outside? Smash it? Call the police? I ended up wrapping it in aluminum foil and shoving it inside a metal tin, just to stop it from sending signals. My hands wouldn't stop shaking the entire time. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. I kept picturing her sitting at home, watching her phone, seeing my exact location. The next morning, I checked Tinder. Her profile was still there, active, like nothing had happened. She even sent me a message, "Had a great time last night." I didn't respond. I unmatched her immediately and blocked her number. But even after that, I couldn't shake the paranoia. I kept checking around my apartment, wondering if she'd followed me anyway, if she'd show up outside. A few days later, I threw the AirTag into a dumpster miles away from my place. Even then, I wasn't sure if that solved anything. What if she had more? What if she planted something else without me noticing? It's been weeks since, and I still can't wear that jacket without feeling uneasy. Every time I put it on, I imagine her slipping the AirTag into the pocket, smiling to herself while I sat across the table, completely unaware. And the scariest part is knowing I wouldn't have even realized if my phone hadn't warned me. She could have kept tracking me for who knows how long. Now, whenever I get a random notification on my phone, I can't help but wonder if someone else is following me. If some stranger is watching every move I make just because I swiped right on the wrong person. The first time it happened, I thought it was just nerves. We'd matched on Tinder a few weeks before, and he'd been polite, almost formal in his messages. He never sent me random memes or double texts. He asked questions, listened to my answers, and responded thoughtfully. In a sea of weird pickup lines and shirtless bathroom selfies, he felt like a reprieve. Someone normal. Safe. When we finally decided to meet, it was at a small coffee shop downtown. Neutral territory. Plenty of people around. I wore a soft blue sweater and spent the whole Hoover ride rehearsing casual things to say, just in case conversation lagged. He was already sitting at a table when I arrived, posture straight, hands folded neatly around a ceramic mug. He stood when he saw me, smiled, shook my hand. Not many guys do that anymore. We sat, ordered drinks, and then, as we were waiting for our lattes, he asked where I grew up. I laughed before I could stop myself. "You already asked me that," I said. His eyebrows lifted. "Did I?" "Yeah, on the app," I said, "but it's fine." He smiled faintly, the kind of polite smile you give a stranger holding the door open for you, and nodded. "Oh, right." I brushed it off. First date nerves. Maybe he just wanted to hear me say it in person. But it kept happening. On our second date, a dimly lit bistro where he insisted on paying, he asked what kind of music I liked. I told him indie folk, some older rock, a bit of jazz. He nodded thoughtfully like it was new information, but it wasn't. We'd already had a whole conversation about our favorite albums over text. By the third date, I started to feel it in my stomach, an unease, like a faint pressure behind my ribs. He'd ask the same questions. Not just similar ones, but the same phrasing. "Do you read much? Favorite food? Siblings?" Each question delivered with that same polite interest, like he was running down a list. At first, I played along, repeating my answers like an actor reciting lines. But the repetition made my skin crawl. On our fourth date, I couldn't take it anymore. We were sitting on a park bench, the late autumn sun spilling through the trees, when I turned to him and said, "Do you know you've asked me all these questions before?" For a heartbeat, his expression didn't change. Then something flickered across his face. Embarrassment, maybe panic. He looked down at his hands. "I have early stage dementia," he said quietly. "Sometimes I forget things. I didn't want to tell you right away. It's not personal." I stared at him, my mouth suddenly dry. "Oh," I said. "I'm so sorry." He gave a small, tight smile. "It's okay." I felt guilty for being creeped out. I'd been imagining something sinister, and it turned out to be an illness, a medical condition. I told myself to be understanding. He was kind. He listened. He never tried anything pushy or weird. So I kept seeing him, even though the repetition never stopped. A week later, he invited me to his apartment for dinner. I hesitated, but he'd been nothing but respectful, and I figured it was just pasta, not some trap. His building was a squat brick thing on a quiet street, the hallway lined with framed prints of sailboats and sunflowers. Inside, his place was immaculate. No clutter, no knickknacks, no warmth. Just white walls, gray furniture, and a few framed photos of landscapes. He cooked pasta with pesto, poured us each a glass of wine, and we ate at a small table by the window. He asked me again where I'd grown up. I smiled tightly and answered like always. After dinner, while he was rinsing dishes in the kitchen, I wandered a little. His desk sat in the corner, papers stacked neatly on top. Notebooks lined the shelf above it, each one labeled with dates in block letters. January 2. February 14. March 10. The one on top had today's date. I hesitated, my heart starting to thud, and then reached for it. Inside, the pages were filled with notes. My notes. My hometown, my favorite color, my favorite music, all written out carefully word for word like study material. Even things I'd mentioned once in passing, like how I hated clowns or how my grandma's house smelled like lavender. Each question numbered, each answer recorded with little check marks next to it. I flipped to the next page. More details. The street I'd grown up on. The time I usually left for work, my Starbucks order. Things I didn't even remember telling him. Things that were only on my social media, buried in old posts. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a memory aid. This was something else. Something meticulous, obsessive. I turned another page with shaking fingers. More names, more dates, lists of women. Each entry a different person, their details cataloged. The sync shut off. I snapped the notebook shut and slid it back into place just as he walked in, drying his hands on a towel. He smiled at me, that same polite smile, and sat on the couch. "So," he said, "where did you grow up?" I felt my throat close. "Same place as before," I said, forcing a laugh. He nodded thoughtfully like he was hearing it for the first time. I made an excuse about needing to get up early and left soon after. He offered to walk me out. I said I was fine. My heart pounded all the way down the stairwell. On the sidewalk outside, I took a deep breath, but it didn't help. My skin felt too tight. My heart wouldn't slow down. At home, I sat on my bed and opened Tinder. His profile was still there. Same photos, same bio. I stared at it for a long time, wondering how many notebooks he'd filled before mine. How many women he'd studied, memorized, cataloged. I matched him, blocked his number, deleted his messages. It didn't make me feel safe. Every time I leave my apartment now, I have the sense of being watched, with someone writing everything down. When my phone buzzes with an unknown number, my stomach clenches. When I see a man with his head down in a notebook on the subway, my hands start to shake. Somewhere, in a neat little apartment on a quiet street, there's a notebook with my name on it, filled cover to cover with every detail I ever gave him. I know, deep down, he's still flipping through it. The first time she mentioned her roommate, it didn't even register. We'd matched on Tinder, talked for a couple of weeks, and she invited me over. She dropped it casually like it was nothing. "Oh, by the way, I have a roommate, but he mostly keeps to himself." I didn't think twice. It's not unusual. Most people share apartments to save money. Her place was on the second floor of an old building with narrow hallways and creaky wooden stairs. The kind of place where everything smells faintly of dust and coffee grounds. Inside, though, it was warm. Plants lined the windowsill. The lamps gave off a soft yellow glow, and throw blankets were draped across the couch like she actually used them, not just for decoration. It felt lived in. Safe. She poured me a drink, and we sat talking until late. She laughed a lot, tilting her head back when she did, and she had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Nothing about that first visit felt off. If anything, it was disarming how normal it all seemed. I left without ever seeing anyone else. The second visit was the same. We ordered takeout, watched a show on her laptop, and talked. She asked about my job, told me about hers, and the conversation felt easy. The only odd thing was the occasional sound from the back of the apartment, a soft door closing, faint footsteps on the wood floor. I asked once if her roommate was home, and she nodded quickly but changed the subject. I figured maybe the roommate was shy, or maybe he just didn't like having strangers in the apartment. No big deal. By the third visit, I was comfortable enough to stop thinking about it. It was late when I arrived, close to midnight. She let me in, wearing a loose sweater and leggings, her hair pulled back. She seemed different that night, relaxed but distracted, glancing toward the hallway more than usual. We opened a bottle of wine and settled on the couch. The city outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something. At one point, she excused herself to the bathroom. I sat scrolling on my phone, and that's when it happened. The sense of being watched. It wasn't a sound. It was a feeling like the air had shifted, thickened somehow. I turned my head toward the hallway. The door at the end was cracked open just slightly. And for a split second, I saw it. A shadow moving behind the doorframe. I froze, my thumb hovering over my screen. The air felt heavy, pressing against my chest. The shadow didn't move again, but I couldn't shake the sense that someone, was standing there. A moment later, she came back, smiling like nothing had happened. She sat down, poured herself another glass of wine. I didn't say anything. I told myself I was being paranoid. Old buildings creak, shadows shift. People imagine things. But then the details started adding up. The extra toothbrush in the bathroom. The men's shoes lined up neatly by the front door. A deep voice I thought I'd heard once when she was on the phone in the kitchen. Little things I'd brushed off because they didn't fit the story I had been told. Now they gnawed at me. When she went to the kitchen to grab more wine, curiosity got the better of me. My heart hammered as I stood up and walked quietly toward the hallway. The door at the end was still cracked open. I inched closer. And that's when I saw him. A man, sitting in a chair in the dark, facing the door, watching me. His face was half hidden in shadow, but his eyes locked on mine, calm, unblinking. My stomach dropped. The air seemed to vanish from the hallway. My knees felt weak. I stumbled back, almost tripping over myself, and she appeared suddenly, carrying the wine. Her eyes flicked from me to the door. And instead of surprise, she just smiled. A slow, knowing smile. That's when I realized. He wasn't a roommate. He was her husband. And they'd both been in on it the entire time. I muttered something about needing to leave, my voice shaking. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there with that smile, the bottle of wine dangling loosely from her hand. The man in the shadows didn't move. He stayed seated, his face unreadable, eyes still locked on mine. It felt like a test had just failed. I grabbed my jacket from the chair and headed for the door. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the lock undone. The hallway outside felt endless, every step echoing like a gunshot. When I finally stepped out of the building, the night air hit me like a wave. Cold. Sharp, but it didn't calm me. My pulse was still racing. I felt eyes on me the whole way down the stairs. I got into my car and sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. My mind replayed everything, her evasive answers, the noises from the back room, the men's belongings I'd ignored. It all made sense now. When I pulled out of the lot, I glanced up at her window. Both of them were standing there, side by side, watching me leave. I blocked her on Tinder that night, deleted the app for good measure, but the image stuck with me. Two people perfectly calm, playing a game I never agreed to be part of. And the worst part, I still don't know what their endgame was. Were they just watching for fun? Testing how long it would take me to figure it out? Or were they waiting for a night when I didn't notice the shadow in the hall? I never went back to find out. When I made my Tinder bio, I didn't think much about it. Just a quick sentence to sum myself up. Coffee addict, bookstore wanderer, and I take way too many late night walks. It wasn't clever, but it felt honest. I'd left it like that for months without touching it. So when I matched with this guy and saw his profile, my stomach flipped. His bio was exactly the same as mine, word for word, even the commas. At first, I thought maybe it was a glitch. Maybe Tinder accidentally copied mine onto his. But when I looked closer, the photos made it worse. His first picture was him at a cafe, my cafe. Not literally mine, but the one it posted a photo from back in January, sitting at the same table by the window. Same angle, same mug, just him instead of me. The second photo was him outside a bookstore downtown, the one with the mural of a woman reading painted across the brick wall. I'd taken a picture there 2 months earlier. The third photo made my skin crawl. Him on a walking path by the river at night under a glowing streetlight. I had almost the exact same shot in my own gallery, the same bend in the path, the same lamp burning a circle of light into the dark. It was too specific to be coincidence. I stared at his profile, trying to convince myself it was random. People liked coffee shops and bookstores. People went for walks. Maybe we had the same habits. But why copy my bio? Curiosity got the better of me. I swiped right. We matched instantly like he'd been waiting. He messaged me first, said it was funny how similar our profiles were. I asked him straight out why his bio was the same. He just replied, "Great minds think alike." I tried to joke about it, but inside I felt uneasy. I asked when he'd been to those places in his photos. He gave vague answers, never specific. Always a few months ago or back in spring, which was when I had been there. We talked for a couple of days, but it didn't feel normal. Every time I mentioned something about myself, he mirrored it back. If I said I liked oat milk lattes, suddenly it was his favorite too. If I said I jogged in the morning, he'd say he did too, always with this casual tone, like it wasn't strange at all. I should have unmatched, but some part of me needed to know more. We finally agreed to meet at a coffee shop, again, one I'd posted about months earlier. The day we met, the sky was heavy with clouds, the air damp like it wanted to rain. My stomach churned as I walked to the cafe. Inside, the smell of roasted beans and baked bread wrapped around me, familiar but suddenly threatening. He was already there, sitting at the window table, smiling. He looked normal enough. Average height, clean-cut hair, plain gray sweater. Nothing alarming at first glance. But when he smiled and waved me over, I noticed his phone on the table. My profile was open on his screen. Not Tinder or screenshots. Dozens of them. I sat down slowly, pretending I hadn't seen. He asked me the same questions he'd already asked in chat, word for word. What do you like to do in your free time? Favorite drink? Any siblings? His voice was pleasant, almost rehearsed. I answered, keeping my eyes on my cup, trying not to show how uneasy I was. At one point, he excused himself to the bathroom. His phone buzzed while he was gone, and the screen lit up. Against my better judgment, I glanced. A notification preview showed a folder title, or spots. My chest tightened. When he came back, he acted normal. I couldn't shake it. I made an excuse about having to leave early, and he didn't protest. Just smiled and said he'd see me soon. Back home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I pulled up my own Instagram, scrolling through my posts. Every location I'd tagged, every photo I'd shared. He had a matching picture on his Tinder. Sometimes weeks after mine, sometimes months. Always following, never ahead. I checked again the next day, but his profile was gone. Vanished completely. I tried to move on. Told myself I was overreacting. People are weird online. Screenshots don't always mean something sinister. But a week later, I saw something that made my stomach drop. I was walking home from work at dusk, the sky streaked pink and gray. The air was crisp, leaves scattering on the sidewalk. My route took me past the river path, the same one from his photo. As I neared the bend under the streetlight, I saw a man standing there. Same spot, same posture, looking down at his phone. I couldn't see his face clearly in the dark, but my pulse spiked. I kept walking, faster now, my footsteps too loud on the pavement. I didn't look back until I reached a corner, and when I did, the path behind me was empty. That night, I set my Instagram to private. Deleted some posts. Wiped my Tinder bio. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he already had everything saved. The screenshots on his phone. The notes. The folder named after me. Sometimes when I'm out, I get the sense I'm being watched. Not always, not every day, but enough that it lingers. Like if I post a picture, I'll see someone standing in that spot a week later, just out of the corner of my eye. When my phone buzzes with an unknown number, I hesitate to answer. When I see a man taking photos at a cafe, my stomach twists. And I can't help but wonder how long he'd been following me before I even noticed. How many great minds there were before me. And whether somewhere on his phone, there's a new folder with a new name, someone else's spots. I didn't think twice when he locked the door. That's what people do when they're inside, right? You go into someone's apartment, they close the door, the lock clicks, and you move on with the night. It wasn't until later that the sound replayed in my head, louder than it should have been, heavier somehow. We matched on Tinder a couple weeks before. He was friendly, not pushy. His pictures were ordinary, a gym mirror selfie, a group shot with friends, and one of him hiking somewhere green and rocky. No fishing photos, no weird filters, no red flags I could see. When he asked if I wanted to come over to his place for drinks, I hesitated. Normally, I'd say no to that. But something about him seemed safe. He was polite in messages, never too forward. I convinced myself it was fine. His apartment was small but clean. A couch facing a mounted TV, a coffee table with magazines stacked neatly, shelves lined with random knickknacks, a little lighthouse, a snow globe, a framed photo of a dog. There was nothing overtly creepy about it. He offered me a drink, poured one for himself, and we sat down. The conversation was casual at first, but he kept steering it toward personal questions. Where I lived, who I lived with, whether anyone was waiting for me at home. I answered vaguely, brushing it off as small talk. But in the back of my mind, the questions stacked up like bricks. After a while, I decided I'd had enough. It wasn't bad, just off. I grabbed my bag and walked to the door, thanking him for the drink. When I reached for the latch, my hand froze. There was no latch, just an empty space where the lock mechanism should have stuck out. A raw rectangle of wood and metal like something had been removed. My stomach tightened. I twisted the handle, but the door didn't budge. The bolt was locked from the outside. He was still on the couch, watching me. He didn't say anything at first, just sipped his drink, eyes fixed on me like he was waiting to see what I'd do. My pulse thudded in my ears. I laughed nervously, trying to play it off. "I think your door is stuck," I said. He tilted his head, smile widening slightly. "Yeah," he said. "I need to fix that." But the way he said it didn't sound casual. It sounded deliberate. I backed away from the door slowly, my bag clutched against me. My mind raced through excuses. I told him I really needed to leave, that I had work in the morning, that someone was expecting me. He didn't move. Just leaned back on the couch, calm, almost amused. The room felt smaller with every second. The walls closer, the ceiling lower. I glanced around, searching for another exit. There was a window, but it was 2 stories up, no fire escape. The kitchen had another door, but when I walked toward it, I realized it led to a pantry, not outside. He finally stood, walking slowly toward me. Not aggressive, not rushing, just steady. The closer he got, the more I realized how much bigger he was than me. His shoulders filled the hallway. His shadow stretched long across the carpet. My heart hammered so hard I thought I might collapse. I blurted out that I wasn't feeling well. I made a show of holding my stomach, stumbling slightly. For a moment, his expression flickered. Annoyance. A quick flash like a crack in plaster. I thought he might block me. I thought he might say no. Instead, he sighed. He walked past me, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a key. He unlocked the door with a slow, deliberate click. Then he stepped aside, motioning toward the hallway. His eyes never left mine. "Feel better," he said softly. I walked out as quickly as I could, muttering thanks like I hadn't just realized I was trapped. My legs felt like jelly all the way down the stairs, my ears straining for the sound of footsteps behind me. When I finally hit the street, I almost collapsed with relief. The air was cold and sharp, scraping my lungs as I breathed. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, clutching my bag tight, my phone gripped in my hand. That night, I couldn't stop replaying it. The missing latch, the way he sat there watching me struggle with the door, the calmness in his face like it was all routine. I thought about the questions he'd asked me, where I lived, who I lived with, whether anyone was expecting me. He'd been gathering information. The next day, I checked Tinder. His profile was gone. Not unmatched, just completely gone, like he'd deleted it. And that's when it hit me. The latch wasn't broken. It had been removed. On purpose. I pictured him sitting on that couch, sipping his drink, waiting to see what I'd do. I pictured the key in his pocket, the bolt in the door, the way his eyes followed me. He decided to let me go. That's what makes my chest tighten now, knowing how easily he could have decided not to. Every time I hear a lock click behind me, I feel my stomach knot. In Ubers and apartments, even in my own home, I double-check the latches now. I text friends my location before I meet anyone, because I keep thinking about how no one would know where I was, and how next time, someone like him might not use the key at all. I've never been a fan of home-cooked meals on a first date. Something about it feels too intimate too fast, like skipping ahead in a movie before you know the plot. But she insisted. Said she loved cooking, said she wanted to impress me. Her texts were warm but measured, like she'd been planning it. I didn't want to seem rude, so I agreed. Her apartment was small but neat, tucked above a corner shop on a quiet street. When I arrived, the hallway smelled faintly of incense and old wood. She opened the door before I even knocked a second time, smiling wide like she'd been standing right there waiting. Inside, the place looked like something out of a lifestyle blog. Tiny string lights along the windowsill, plants hanging from macrame holders, a small round table set with 2 plates, candles burning low, and wine already poured. The kind of setup people spend hours arranging to make it look casual. She was cheerful, maybe too cheerful, moving around the kitchen like she'd been rehearsing. Stirring, chopping, humming an unfamiliar tune under her breath. Her hair was pinned back neatly, her sleeves rolled to her elbows, and there wasn't a single dirty dish in sight. I sat at the counter, trying to relax, scrolling my phone while she stirred pots. The smell was good, garlic, herbs, something rich simmering. I didn't ask too many questions about what she was making. She seemed excited, and I didn't want to ruin it by being picky. When she finally set the plates down, she looked almost proud. Her eyes stayed on me as I lifted my fork, like she was waiting for a reaction. The food was good, better than I expected. Creamy sauced, tender meat, perfect seasoning. I told her so, and her smile widened, but she didn't touch her own plate. She just kept staring at me, head tilted slightly, like she was watching for something I couldn't see. It didn't take long. A few minutes after eating, I felt it. At first, just a tingle in my lips, then a tightening in my throat, a heavy, spreading heat across my chest and arms. My stomach dropped. I knew this feeling. I was allergic. Not the kind of allergy you casually mention, either. A serious one. The kind that could send me to the hospital if it got bad enough. But here's the thing. I'd never told her about it. Not once. It wasn't on my Tinder, I'd never brought it up in chat, and I hadn't said anything about it in person. Panic surged through me. My fork clattered against the plate as I pushed it away, gasping. My hands trembled so badly I could barely grip the table. She tilted her head, still smiling faintly. "Everything okay?" she asked softly, like a nurse checking a patient's pulse. My voice cracked as I asked what was in the food. She listed ingredients casually: garlic, cream, a handful of herbs, and then slipped in the one thing I couldn't eat. The exact thing. My heart pounded. My lips were numb now, my throat felt like it was closing, and she just sat there calmly, sipping her wine, eyes never leaving mine. I stumbled to my bag, ripping it open, fumbling for my EpiPen. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. When I injected it, relief hit slowly, a cool wave under the heat, but my breathing was still ragged, uneven. Sweat dripped down my forehead as I slumped back in the chair, gripping the edge of the table like it might keep me upright. She never moved to help me, never panicked. Just sat there quietly, one elbow on the table, chin resting on her hand, watching. When I finally managed to catch enough breath to speak, I demanded to know how she knew. My voice came out hoarse, like sandpaper. She tilted her head again, like a curious child, and said she just had a feeling. But that didn't make sense. I racked my brain, trying to think if I'd ever slipped up and mentioned it. Maybe on social media. Maybe in some old post years back. My accounts were private, though. I hadn't shared that detail with anyone new in years. The way she looked at me then made my stomach twist. It wasn't random. She knew she planned it. I stood up, dizzy, muttering that I had to go. She didn't argue, didn't try to stop me. Just sat there, smiling faintly as I grabbed my jacket and stumbled out the door. The air outside was cold and sharp, filling my lungs like knives. I staggered down the stairs, gripping the railing to steady myself. Every step felt like moving through Sierra. I barely remember unlocking my car. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice. By the time I got home, the EpiPen had steadied me enough to think straight. My chest still burned, my throat still ached, but my head was clear enough to scroll. That's when I checked my phone. I opened Instagram, scrolling back through years of posts, digging deeper and deeper. And then I found it, buried under hundreds of photos, a picture from a restaurant years ago. Me at a table with friends, laughing, captioned jokingly about how I couldn't eat a certain dish because of my allergy. A throwaway post. Something I'd forgotten about, but it was there. My chest tightened again, not from the reaction this time, but from dread. She'd gone digging. Way back. She hadn't just looked at my recent stuff. She'd combed through years of posts, studied me, memorized details I'd forgotten myself. I opened Tinder. Her profile was still active. Same smiling pictures, same simple bio. She was online. The green dot glowed beside her name. I unmatched instantly, blocked her number, but it didn't help. For days afterward, I couldn't shake the image of her face across the table, calm, curious, almost pleased as I struggled to breathe. Like the reaction wasn't a mistake, but something she wanted to see. And the worst part, she knew exactly what I was allergic to, even though I never told her, which means she could know more. Things I've forgotten I ever shared. Things hidden in old posts, buried in old comments. Things that could matter more than a meal. Sometimes when I walk past a restaurant or grocery store, I feel eyes on me. Like someone's checking to see what I'm buying, what I'm eating, taking notes for later. I can't prove it's her, but I can't prove it's not either. And every time I take a bite of food now, even at home, even alone, I wonder if someone else already knows what's about to happen to me. I thought meeting at a hotel was weird, but she said her apartment was being fumigated and she didn't want to go to my side of town. She booked it herself, sent me the address, even told me what room number to knock on. I almost bailed, but the idea of someone actually going out of their way like that made me feel like she was serious. The hotel wasn't fancy, just one of those mid-range places with a generic logo, a stale smell in the lobby, and soft jazz playing over crackling speakers. Beige hallways, scratchy carpet, doors all identical except for the brass numbers. The kind of place where no one looks at each other too long. I stood outside her door for a moment, hesitating. The hallway was empty, just a hum from the ice machine down the corridor. I raised my hand and knocked. She opened fast, smiling like she'd been waiting right behind it. She looked different from her photos, still attractive, but sharper somehow, more deliberate. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup subtle but neat. The room looked normal. Queen bed, a small desk with a chair, curtains drawn against the neon glow of the parking lot outside. A faint smell of perfume mixed with hotel disinfectant. She had music playing softly from her phone, something upbeat but muted like background noise. We talked for a bit, had a couple of drinks from the small bottle she'd already arranged on the desk. She poured mine herself, ice clinking in the plastic cup. Her laugh was easy, almost rehearsed, and she asked me questions about my job, my family, where I lived. Nothing unusual. Still, something about the room felt staged. No bags on the floor, no coat hanging over the chair, nothing of hers anywhere. Just me, her, and two drinks. I brushed it off. I told myself not to be paranoid. At some point, I sat on the bed while she sat in the chair across from me, legs crossed, swirling her wine. My eyelids felt heavy after a while. Not drunk heavy, but slow like syrup in my veins. The last thing I remember is her laughing at something I said before my eyes closed. When I woke up, everything felt wrong. The light coming through the curtains was harsh, a thin white slice cutting across the carpet. The music was gone. The room was silent except for the low rumble of the air conditioner. My head was heavy cottony. My tongue felt thick. I sat up slowly, blinking, trying to piece together the night. And that's when I noticed it. My clothes were gone. Not just my jacket or shoes. All of it. My shirt, my jeans, even my socks. The only thing on me was the thin hotel sheet I'd pulled over myself in my sleep. Panic surged through me, cutting through the fog. I swung my legs off the bed, scanning the floor. Nothing. The chair was empty. The desk was bare except for the hotel's room service menu. My wallet, my phone, gone. The bathroom. Maybe she'd left something in the bathroom. I stumbled to it, the sheet clutched around my waist, hoping for some trace. A toothbrush, a makeup bag, anything. The counter was bare. The mirror fogged faintly from a shower that had dried hours ago. No sign she'd ever been there. My chest tightened. I yanked open the nightstand drawer, praying my stuff had been dumped there. Nothing. Just the standard hotel Bible, a notepad, and a pen. The reality hit in waves. I was in a hotel I didn't book, in a part of the city I didn't know, with no wallet, no phone, and no clothes. Completely stranded. I tried the door, cracked it open carefully, peering into the hallway. A couple walked past, giving me a strange look as I stood there clutching the sheet. My face burned with embarrassment, but fear drowned it out. I stepped back in and closed the door, breathing hard. My mind raced. Was this a prank? A robbery? Had she drugged me? I remembered the drinks, how she poured them, how I felt slow after just one. I forced myself to open the door fully and step into the hall. My bare feet pressed into the rough carpet, and I felt eyes on me from behind other doors. I took the elevator down, heart hammering. In the lobby, the clerk glanced up, frowning as soon as he saw me. I must have looked insane, wrapped in a sheet, hair a mess, no shoes. I asked if the woman who checked in last night had left anything for me. He shook his head. He looked me up and down, clearly suspicious, and asked if the room was in my name. It wasn't. I couldn't even prove I belonged there. No ID, no reservation, nothing. He said I had to leave if I couldn't show proof, his voice firm but cautious. People in the lobby were staring. I mumbled something about a mix-up and shuffled toward the doors, my grip tightening on the sheet with every step. The air outside slapped me in the face, cold and sharp. I had no idea where I was. The street was busy, cars rushing by, people walking fast, all of them staring at the barefoot guy in a hotel sheet. I wanted to disappear. I walked, aimlessly at first, hoping I'd spot something familiar. I didn't. Every block looked the same, shops, bus stops, strangers giving me side eyes. My feet hurt, the pavement rough against them, but I kept moving, scanning desperately for help. At one point, I ducked into a cafe, trying to explain to the barista that I had been robbed, that I needed to call someone. She looked skeptical, but handed me the store phone. My hands shook as I dialed my roommate's number from memory. When he picked up, I nearly broke down. He came eventually, maybe an hour later, bringing me clothes and a ride home. The relief almost made me collapse, but the humiliation stuck harder. I had to explain everything piece by piece, while people in the cafe pretended not to listen. When I finally got home, I sat on my bed, still wearing the borrowed clothes, and opened Tinder. Her profile was gone. Not unmatched. Completely erased, like it had never existed. The more I thought about it, the less it felt random. She hadn't just robbed me. She planned every detail. The hotel, the drinks, the way I passed out so fast. I don't know if she drugged me or if it was just the alcohol, but either way, she knew exactly what she was doing. I reported it to Tinder, to the hotel, even to the police. But with no name, no ID, no trace, there wasn't much anyone could do. Now, whenever I think about that night, one detail keeps replaying in my head. Right before I fell asleep, I swear I remember her leaning over me, tucking the blanket tighter around me than I thought was normal, her fingers brushing my arm, her smile calm, like she knew she'd be walking out with everything I had. I should have trusted my gut the second I walked into his apartment. It was too bare, too staged, like no one actually lived there. A couch, a TV, a coffee table with nothing on it. No photos on the wall, no clutter, not even shoes by the door. Just clean surfaces and silence, like a showroom instead of a home. We'd been talking on Tinder for a couple of weeks, and he seemed normal enough. Funny, a little awkward, but not creepy. He asked if I wanted to come over and watch a movie, and I said sure. I figured it was safer since we'd already met once in public, and nothing about him had screamed red flag. At first, everything felt fine. We ordered takeout, sat on the couch, and he picked some random action movie. He was polite, maybe a little too quiet, maybe a little too observant, but nothing that set off alarms. Halfway through, I excused myself to use the bathroom. The hallway was short, the bathroom door on the left. Inside, it was spotless. Not tidy, but sterile. White tiles gleamed like they'd been scrubbed that morning. No towel hung on the rack. No toothpaste in the sink. No shampoo bottles in the shower. Just a toothbrush and a cup and a single bar of soap. It didn't feel used. It didn't feel lived in. When I stepped back into the hallway, something caught my eye. A door slightly cracked on the right. An office. I hesitated, pulse quickening. Curiosity itched at me. How could someone's entire apartment look this empty? I told myself I'd just glance. The room was just as sparse. A desk, a swivel chair, a laptop casting a pale glow across the walls. No papers, no pens, no clutter. Just a laptop, open and waiting. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that, but I stepped closer anyway. The screen showed a folder open on the desktop. My stomach dropped instantly. It was my Tinder profile, screenshotted. Not just one picture, every single one. Cropped neatly, saved into a folder with my name on it. I froze, staring, skin prickling. Then my eyes shifted to the sidebar. Dozens of folders, each labeled with different names and descriptions. Blondes, brunettes, curvy, athletic, petite. The list scrolled down, hundreds of them. Each folder had a number in parentheses beside it, file counts. Some had a handful, others had hundreds. I felt my throat tighten. I clicked on mine. Inside were not just my pictures, but screenshots of our conversations. Every message, word for word. He'd highlighted certain sentences in yellow, underlined others in red. Notes at next to them in plain text, clinical little observations, prefers coffee dates, mentions family a lot. Hesitant about meeting at night. My breath caught in my chest. I clicked back, picked another folder at random. It was filled with a different woman's profile. Same thing, photos, conversations, notes. He'd written things like doesn't like dogs or is scared of flying. Another folder, another woman, another set of notes. I would more, faster, my hands trembling. Dozens of women. Different faces, different messages, but all organized the same way. Screenshot after screenshot, highlighted, annotated, cataloged like specimens in a collection. And mine was just one of them. Behind me, the floor creaked. I spun around. He was standing in the doorway, silent, watching. My stomach lurched. My mouth opened, but no words came out. His expression didn't change. No embarrassment, no attempt to explain. Just calm. Still, like he'd been waiting for me to find it. My heart slammed against my ribs. I muttered something, anything, about needing the bathroom again, my voice shaking. I edged past him, clutching my bag strap like a lifeline. He didn't move to stop me, just stepped aside slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. I walked fast down the hall, grabbed my bag from the couch, and muttered that I had to leave. My hands fumbled with the lock, slick with sweat. I could feel his gaze drilling into my back. When I finally yanked the door open, the hallway outside felt like oxygen. I bolted, my shoes slapping the carpet, my breath coming sharp and uneven. I didn't look back until I reached the parking lot. Through his window, I saw him, standing there, curtains half drawn, watching. The drive home was a blur of headlights and panic. I locked my apartment door 3 times, dropped my bag on the floor, and collapsed against the wall. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. But worse than the fear was the realization. He hadn't just been curious. He'd been collecting. Cataloging. Dozens of us, maybe hundreds. Every word, every detail, every preference. Stored neatly in folders like research notes. I pulled up Tinder with trembling hands. His profile was still there, online. Same photos, same bio, like nothing had happened. I unmatched instantly. Blocked him, reported him. But it didn't matter. He already had everything, my pictures, my words, my details, organized neatly in a folder with my name on it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards made me flinch. Every shadow outside my window looked like him standing there watching. And the thought that kept me awake wasn't just what he had on me. It was how many others had walked out of that apartment the same way I did, hearts pounding, stomachs twisting, wondering what else he had on them, wondering if we were all just part of a collection. The first time she did it, I thought it was just a coincidence. We'd matched on Tinder and decided to meet for coffee. She showed up 5 minutes early, already sitting at a corner table when I arrived. She had one of those smiles that looked rehearsed but warm enough to disarm you. We chatted easily, jobs, hobbies, small talk. I told her about a trip I'd taken a couple of years back, one of those forgettable anecdotes you tell to keep conversation flowing. That's when she pulled out her phone. She turned the screen toward me, and my stomach flipped. It was a photo of me. Same trip, same spot. I was leaning against a railing, squinting into the sun, wearing the same old baseball cap I'd lost years ago. I froze for a second before I laughed it off. No way. Where'd you find that? She just smiled and said she liked to research people before meeting them. The way she said it was light, almost teasing, so I didn't push. But the photo wasn't on Tinder. It wasn't even on my Instagram. It was buried in an old Facebook album I'd set to private years ago. I brushed it off. Told myself maybe she dug through tagged photos, maybe Facebook wasn't as airtight as I thought. Weird, yeah, but not terrifying. At least not yet. The second time was harder to ignore. We were at her apartment eating takeout. The place was tidy, borderline sterile. Bookshelves with neatly arranged spines, not a page bent. A single photo on the wall, not of her, but of some abstract print that could have come from IKEA. She asked if I ever played basketball, and I laughed, telling her I used to in high school. Without missing a beat, she picked up her phone and swiped it to a photo. It was me in my high school gym uniform. Hair buzz, short, awkward smile plastered on my face as I held up a trophy. My chest tightened. That picture wasn't on any of my accounts. It wasn't on my mom's Instagram or anything public. It was on her Facebook. My mom's, from a decade ago, buried in some old album only family could see. I tried to keep my voice steady when I asked how she got it. She shrugged, casual, and said, I have my ways. She said it with the same ease someone might say, I Googled you. But her eyes lingered on me too long, watching the way my expression faltered. That's when I realized she wasn't just curious. She was digging. By the third time, I couldn't deny it anymore. We were at a bar, music low enough that conversation hummed just above it. She was scrolling through her phone absently when she turned the screen toward me. It wasn't a meme or a video, it was another photo. This time, it was me at my cousin's wedding last year. Candid, laughing in the background, the drink in my hand. I hadn't been tagged. Hell, I hadn't even seen that picture myself. My cousin had posted it on her private profile. I felt the blood drain from my face. My throat locked up, and for a moment, all I could do was stare. She tilted her head, smiling faintly, waiting for my reaction like she'd set a trap. How? My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried again. How did you get that? She smiled wider. I like knowing people. That was all she said. Nothing more. After that, I couldn't finish my drink. Every time her hand moved toward her phone, I flinched, scared of what she'd show me next. The fourth time broke me. I don't even know why I agreed to another date. Denial, maybe. Curiosity. Some twisted need to see how far she'd go. We were walking through the park at dusk, the air sharp with the smell of damp leaves. She stopped suddenly, pulling out her phone again. No preamble this time, just held it out to me. It was me at 17, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, guitar in hand, hair a mess. The caption under it was some cringy lyric I'd written. I remembered it instantly. It was from my old Twitter account. The one I deleted years ago, embarrassed by every word I'd posted. I deleted that account in high school. I couldn't even pull up that photo myself now if I tried. Yet there it was, glowing on her screen. My stomach twisted into knots. I demanded to know where she got it. For the first time, her smile dropped. Her face went flat, expressionless, and she looked me dead in the eye. I like to collect what I care about, she said. That was it, just that. I mumbled some excuse about being tired, my legs carrying me out of the park faster than I realized. She didn't chase me. She just waved, that faint smile curling back onto her face. When I got home, panic took over. I locked my door, closed my blinds, and tore through every account I still had. I reset passwords, deleted old albums, scrolled through forgotten timelines like a man possessed. I called my mom, begged her to set her account to private. But it didn't matter. She already had it. The photos, the tags, the deleted accounts. The scraps of my life I'd forgotten existed. Saved, cataloged, filed away on her device like I was a specimen in a drawer. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the building made me jolt upright. I kept glancing at my window, half expecting her to be standing there, phone in hand. Just past midnight, my phone buzzed. A new message. Her name on the screen. No words, just another photo. This time, it wasn't from years ago. It wasn't from social media. It was from that evening. Me, walking in my building, taken from across the street. I dropped my phone. My chest went cold, my hands numb. That was the last message she ever sent. I unmatched her on Tinder, blocked her number, deleted every account I could think of, but none of it helped, because I knew it didn't matter. She already had it all. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I can see her scrolling through her phone, smiling, collecting. Somewhere, in some folder I'll never find, is every photo of me that's ever existed. By the third date, I thought I had him figured out. He was quiet but funny when he wanted to be, neat but not obsessive, and the kind of person who actually listened when you talked. After 2 coffee dates and a long walk by the river, he invited me to his house. Said he'd cook this time. It sounded like a normal next step, a safe one. A way to see how he really lived. His place sat just outside of town, tucked on a narrow, tree-lined street with no sidewalks and barely any streetlights. The porch light buzzed as I walked up, casting an anemic yellow glow over the peeling paint. It wasn't creepy exactly, just quiet, almost too quiet. He opened the door before I even knocked. His smile was warm, if a little rehearsed. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. Inside, the first thing I noticed was how clean it was. Not I'd just tidied up for company clean. Bare clean. Sparse. A couch, a TV, a coffee table with nothing on it. No books or magazines. No shoes by the door. No pictures on the walls. It looked less like someone's home and more like an Airbnb stage for photos. We ate in the kitchen at a small 2-seat table. He made pasta, simple but good, and poured wine like it was routine. For a while, it felt fine. Normal. I started thinking maybe he was just one of those minimalists who liked clean lines and empty surfaces. And then I heard it. A faint banging sound, somewhere above us. Dull and rhythmic like something soft hitting wood. I paused mid-bite and glanced up at the ceiling. He followed my eyes and laughed softly. "Old pipes," he said. "They do that sometimes." I nodded, forcing a smile. "Old pipes." "Sure." A few minutes later it came again. Not pipes. Too irregular, not quite steady enough to be mechanical. More like knocking. His gaze flicked up once, then back to me. The same easy smile. "I swear, this house has a personality. You get used to it." I tried to let it go, but my ears kept straining. After dinner we moved to the living room, glasses of wine in hand. He sat close, his knee brushing mine. The banging came again, louder this time. A moment later, something else, a sound that made my skin prickle, a muffled voice. I stiffened. What was that? He chuckled, shaking his head. "Seriously, don't let this place freak you out. It's just old." He leaned in closer, changing the subject, but my attention stayed fixed on the ceiling. He got up to grab the bottle for a refill, disappearing into the kitchen. The second he was out of sight, I slipped down the hallway. My heart thudded against my ribs, every nerve screaming at me to stop. But curiosity pulled me forward. At the end of the hall was a ceiling hatch, the kind with a pull-down ladder. A shiny metal latch locked it shut. I stood beneath it, holding my breath. That's when I heard it clearly. A muffled cry. Not pipes, not the house selling, the human voice. Desperate, panicked. Another thump followed, like something hitting the floor above. My stomach flipped. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my glass. I leaned closer, my ear almost against the wood. Another cry. Definitely human. Definitely coming from the attic. My chest tightened, a cold wave running down my back. Behind me, the floor creaked. I spun around. He was standing at the end of the hall watching me. Wine bottle in one hand, 2 glasses in the other. His face was unreadable. He didn't say a word. Just tilted his head slightly, eyes locked on mine. I forced a smile, my voice barely steady. "Sorry, I was looking for the bathroom." He held my gaze for a moment longer, then stepped aside, motioning vaguely toward the other door. "Second on the left," he said. I brushed past him, heart hammering, and ducked into the bathroom. I shut the door and locked it, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. The room was as bare as the rest of the house. No towels, no toiletries, just a toothbrush and a cup and a bar of soap. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, willing myself to calm down. But above me, faintly, came another muffled thump. I flushed the toilet to cover the sound of my breathing, then stepped out. He was back in the living room, pouring wine like nothing had happened. I sat stiff on the couch, pretending to sip, pretending to listen as he talked about some movie he liked. My ears stayed tuned to the ceiling. Every so often, another faint bang, another muffled cry. He never acknowledged it. Finally, I made an excuse about needing to get up early. He didn't protest, didn't try to stop me, just walked me to the door, still smiling faintly, and said, "Text me when you get home." I stepped outside into the night, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice before I managed to unlock my car. I didn't look back at the house. I couldn't. I drove home on autopilot, gripping the wheel until my fingers ached. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound replayed in my head over and over. The muffled cries, the banging, the way he just smiled like nothing was wrong. The next morning, I opened Tinder. His profile was gone, completely erased. I thought about going to the police, but what would I even say? That I heard noises in the guy's attic. That he smiled weird when I asked. I had no proof, nothing concrete, just a sick feeling in my gut and a memory of that muffled voice. Days passed, weeks. The image of the locked attic ladder still haunted me. Every time a pike groaned in my own apartment, I froze. Every time I walked down a hallway, I glanced up, half expecting to see a hatch above me latched shut. And I keep wondering what would have happened if I'd asked him to open it. Or worse, if he actually agreed. I met her on Tinder after a string of boring matches. She stood out right away. Her pictures were simple, nothing over the top, just her smiling in different places around the city. She seemed normal, grounded. We talked for a bit as she invited me out for drinks. The first date was fine. A little awkward, but nothing bad. Second one was smoother. By the third, I figured she was genuinely into me. That night, after a few rounds at the bar, she leaned close and asked if I wanted to come back to her place. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because it felt sudden. She brushed it off with a grin, said her place was nearby, and that her room was downstairs. I didn't think much about it. Some houses have basements turned into bedrooms. We got to her place, a small house tucked between two bigger ones on a quiet street. The lights upstairs were off except for one glowing dimly in the kitchen. She led me through the front door, past the living room, and down a narrow hallway. At the end was a wooden door. She pulled it open, motioning me to follow. The stairs creaked as we went down. The basement was cooler than upstairs, the air heavier. She flicked on a light and the room came alive. It looked normal enough. Bed in the corner, a desk, a dresser, even posters on the wall. She laughed about it being kind of plain, but it looked lived in. I set my jacket on the chair and tried to relax. But something about the door caught my attention. When it swung shut, I noticed the lock. It was on the outside. I froze for a second staring at it. A heavy metal latch sat on the upper side of the door frame, positioned so it could only be locked from the hallway. Inside, there was nothing. No knob lock, no bolt, no way to secure it from my side. I forced myself to act casual, turning back to her as she sat on the bed, scrolling her phone like nothing was strange. My pulse was already racing. The thought hit me immediately. If she closed that door, I'd be trapped. I tried to distract myself, looking around the room for other exits. There weren't any. The only window was small, half buried in the ground outside, covered with metal bars, not big enough to crawl through. The basement suddenly felt smaller, tighter. My chest got heavy, my ears straining for any sound upstairs. I imagined the door slamming shut, the latch sliding into place, and me pounding against it with no one to hear. She looked up at me then, smiling faintly, asking if I was okay. I forced a laugh and nodded, sitting on the edge of the chair like it was comfortable, but my eyes kept flicking to the door. The longer I sat there, the louder my thoughts got. Why was the lock outside? Why downstairs? Why invite me here on the third date? I stood up casually, muttering something about needing the bathroom. She pointed upstairs, said it was at the end of the hall. I walked toward the stairs slowly, my hands trembling at my sides. When I reached the door, I paused. My eyes locked on the latch again. It gleamed faintly under the hallway light, solid and heavy. I pushed the door open, stepping into the hall. The air upstairs felt lighter instantly, easier to breathe. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face, gripping the sink until my knuckles whitened. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. Maybe the lock was old. Maybe the basement used to be a storage room. But no matter how I twisted it, the setup was wrong. When I came back down, she was sitting cross-legged on the bed, still scrolling her phone. She didn't ask why it took so long. Didn't even look up at first. I sat back on the chair, trying to think of an excuse to leave. My mind scrambled for something believable. Work in the morning. A family emergency. Anything. But before I could say it, there was a noise upstairs. A faint thud like a door closing. She glanced up at the ceiling, then back at me, smiling faintly. My roommate, she said casually. But the way her smile lingered made my stomach drop. I didn't wait any longer. I stood abruptly, grabbing my jacket, blurting out that I really had to go. She tilted her head, watching me closely, but didn't argue. She just said, "All right," softly, and looked back at her phone. I walked quickly up the stairs, forcing myself not to run. My eyes darted once more to the latch as I passed. It sat there waiting, unlocked, for now. When I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a wall. I didn't look back. I walked fast down the street, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. When I finally got home, I blocked her on Tinder, deleted her number. But I couldn't stop picturing that door, the heavy metal latch, and the faint thud of something moving upstairs. And I keep thinking about one thing. If I'd stayed a little longer, if I hadn't noticed the lock, if I'd actually fallen asleep down there, I don't think that door would have stayed open. I matched with him on a Sunday night, scrolling mindlessly when I should have been sleeping. My thumb hovered over his profile longer than usual. He looked normal. His pictures weren't the over-edited gym selfies or weird bathroom shots I usually saw. One at a park, one at a pub with friends, one of him leaning against his car. His bio was short, unremarkable. His messages were confident but not pushy. By Wednesday, we'd already traded playlists, swapped jokes, and made plans for dinner. Our first date was fine. More than fine. He was polite, asked questions, and actually listened when I answered. He didn't interrupt or glance at his phone. His eye contact was intense, like he was watching every word land, but not in a way that felt threatening, just focused, like I was the only person in the room. No red flags, not that night. When he asked to see me again, I agreed without hesitation. The second time we met, it was at a casual bar near my office. He was already there when I arrived, standing outside like he'd been waiting. He smiled when he saw me, that same steady gaze, and for a moment it was comforting. We had drinks, shared fries, and when he asked about my week, he remembered tiny details from our last conversation. At some point, I mentioned him to my friend Sarah, just casually, his first name, his car, where we'd gone. She froze. "Described him," she said. I did. Her face dropped. She told me one of her coworkers had a friend who'd gone missing last month. A girl who matched with someone on Tinder. She pulled up a photo on her phone. It was blurry, cropped from a group shot, but the shape of his jaw was unmistakable. Same eyes, same car in the background. My stomach turned. I laughed nervously, saying maybe it was a coincidence. Sarah didn't laugh. She told me not to see him again. I promised I wouldn't, but I did. Something in me wanted answers. I couldn't just ghost him, not after hearing that. I needed to know if it was real, if it was him, or if the story had twisted somewhere along the chain of retellings. So I agreed to a third date. We met at a quiet restaurant, dimly lit, the kind of place where the waiters glide silently between tables. He smiled when he saw me, same calm demeanor, same steady stare. We ordered drinks, made small talk, but my mind wasn't on it. My palms were damp. Every time his hand moved, my pulse jumped. Halfway through, I blurted it out. "I heard something about you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Someone told me you were the last person seen with a girl who went missing." For a second, his face went blank, his fork hovered above his plate. Then he smiled, not a nervous smile, a slow, deliberate one. "That's what you heard," he said softly. I nodded, my heart hammering. He shook his head, chuckling under his breath. "Small world. Yeah, I went out with her once. We had drinks. She never texted me back after. That's all." His tone was casual, like he was recounting a boring anecdote. My chest tightened. "Did the police talk to you?" "Of course," he said. "Standard stuff." They cleared me. Nothing to worry about. He leaned forward then, his eyes locking onto mine. "Do you trust me?" The question hung between us. I forced a laugh, changed the subject, but the rest of the night felt suffocating. Every time he smiled, I wondered if she had sat across from him the same way, hearing the same calm explanations. When he walked me to my car, I kept my keys clenched between my fingers ready. He leaned against my door, smiling faintly, and said, "I'm glad you gave me a chance." His voice was soft, almost reassuring. I drove off quickly, my hands trembling against the wheel. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept scrolling through articles about missing women, looking for her name, his name, anything. The reports were vague, just that she was last seen leaving a bar with a man whose description matched him. No arrests, no updates. I reread our Tinder messages, every good morning, every when can I see you again. It looked normal, but now they felt loaded, like there was something hidden between the lines. At 2 a.m., I unmatched him, blocked his number, deleted our chats. But the unease didn't go away. The next morning, I opened Instagram. There was a new follower request, his face. Same calm smile. I deleted it instantly, my heart thudding in my chest. Then it hit me. I'd never told him my last name. I sat on my couch, staring at the screen. My profile was private. My username wasn't my real name. None of my photos were geotagged. How did he find me? I locked my account, turned off location settings, even deleted old posts. But it didn't feel like enough. Every time I walked home from work, I checked behind me. Every time I heard footsteps too close, I sped up. Weeks passed. No new accounts. No messages. No knocks at my door. But I couldn't shake it, the way he'd smile at me across the table, like we were sharing some secret. The way his voice stayed calm when I asked about her. The way he'd said, "Do you trust me?" like he already knew the answer. And the part that keeps me awake most nights isn't wondering if he did. It's wondering how close I came to being the next one people whispered about. I thought it was kind of cute at first when she asked for a selfie. We hadn't even started the date yet. We were standing outside the restaurant, still deciding whether to eat inside or grab drinks somewhere else, when she pulled out her phone and leaned close. She smiled wide, tilted her head, and said we should take a cute couple selfie before dinner. I laughed, a little thrown off. We weren't a couple. This was our first date. But she was already snapping the photo, pressing her cheek against mine, the camera flash going off before I could protest. I didn't think much of it. People overshare, right? Some people take pictures of everything. Maybe she was just one of those people who documented every moment. Dinner went fine. Better than fine, really. She talked a lot, dominating the conversation. But she wasn't boring. She told stories about her job, her family, vacations she wanted to take. A little intense, maybe, especially with how direct her questions were. She asked if I'd dated anyone seriously before Tinder. She asked if I'd ever been photographed by strangers. She asked if I liked being remembered. Weird questions, but not creepy enough to make me leave. We said goodnight around 10. She hugged me, held on a little too long, then walked away smiling. I drove home thinking maybe I'd give her another shot. That's when I checked Instagram. I wasn't following her account, but I remembered her handle from Tinder. Curiosity got the better of me. I typed it in, scrolled, and froze. The selfie we'd taken just hours earlier was already posted. Same picture, me with an awkward smile, her pressed against me like we'd been together for months. But it wasn't the photo that made my stomach drop. It was a caption. Another one for the collection. My mouth went dry. I scrolled further down her page. Dozens of photos. All selfies with different men. Each one posted with the same type of caption. Another one for the collection. Adding to the set. One more to remember. The men all looked different. Tall, short, older, younger. None of them repeated. Always her in the center, smiling brightly, with some guy looking a little confused like me. The most recent ones stretched back months, maybe even a year. The comments were turned off on every post. My chest tightened as I kept scrolling. The strangest part was how every single photo looked like it was taken on first date. The backgrounds were restaurants, coffee shops, movie theaters, parks, casual places. And none of the men had their arms around her. None leaned in. They all looked caught off guard. Like me. I should have stopped, but I didn't. I counted the posts. 37. 37 men, each one frozen in a smiling photo with her, lined up like trophies. And now I was number 38. I dropped my phone onto the couch and stood pacing. My apartment suddenly felt smaller. Why would she call it a collection? Why'd brag about it like that? Was it some kind of joke? Some bizarre art project? Or was there more to it? The thought hit me like a punch. Where were those guys now? I picked my phone back up and zoomed in on the faces. They didn't look happy. Some looked nervous. Some looked annoyed. A few looked blank, like they'd already given up fighting whatever was happening. None of them looked like they thought they were in a cute couple selfie. I told myself it was just some creepy social media habit, but my stomach was churning. My skin itched. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I refreshed her profile one more time before bed. A new story had gone up. It was a boomerang clip of the selfie we took, her laughing, my uncomfortable half smile looping over and over. Text scrawled across it in bright letters. Tonight's catch. My face burned hot. My throat tightened. I set my phone face down on the nightstand, but I couldn't close my eyes. Every time I tried, I saw her smile frozen in that looping boomerang. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I checked again. The story was gone, but the post remained. Dozens of likes. Still no comments. I considered messaging her, asking what the hell it meant, but something stopped me. The idea of her knowing how much it got to me made my skin crawl. I unfollowed the profile, blocked her number, unmatched on Tinder. But it didn't help. All day at work, my mind kept drifting back to it. The caption. The gallery. The possibility that every single one of those men thought they were just meeting someone for dinner, just like I did, and ended up immortalized as part of some twisted collection. By lunch, I was combing through her posts again. Even though I'd already blocked her, I used a coworker's phone to search. Same grid of faces, same captions. Something new caught my eye. The backgrounds. They weren't random. At first, they looked like ordinary places, but the more I stared, the more I noticed a pattern. Many of them were in the same few spots. The same dimly lit bar. The same corner table at the diner downtown. The same park bench under a crooked street lamp. It wasn't dozens of random dates scattered around the city. It was the same handful of locations, over and over. Like she was leading them somewhere. Like a ritual. That night, I lay in bed with my curtains open, staring at the dark street outside. Every pair of footsteps made me stiffen. Every car that slowed made my pulse spike. I told myself she couldn't find me. She didn't know where I lived. But then I remembered the hug. The way her hand lingered on my back longer than it should have. Had she slipped something into my pocket, taken something from me? A key? A receipt? Anything with my address? I tore through my wallet, my jacket, my bag. Everything looked the same. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she had taken something without me noticing. Days passed. Nothing new posted on her page. No new messages. No strange knocks on my door. But the fear didn't leave. I couldn't stop thinking about those men. The 37 faces staring blankly from her profile. The places that repeated. The captions that never changed. And the thought that kept me awake most nights wasn't just that I was posted on her page. It was what happened to the 37 before me. Because no matter how many times I searched, I couldn't find a single one of them anywhere else online. Not a tagged post. Not a comment. Not even a trace. As if the only place they ever existed was in her collection. And now so did I.